A pleasant day to all of you. I'm Elena Santos and I'm here to present a webinar on recognizing mental health problems, first aid, coping, and when to seek for help. Before we start, please make sure that you have with you a paper and a pen for our activities. For each activity, you will be prompted to pause the video to have ample time in accomplishing the activity. In this webinar, the first objective is for you to learn how to identify and recognize behavior and symptoms related to your mental health. In doing so, you may know when you should be asking for help, be it for yourself or for other people around you, such as your friends, colleagues, or family. Now, in giving and asking for help, we better prepare ourselves with PFA or psychological first aid, which aims to reduce stress. Finally, the last objective of this webinar is to foster healthy coping skills. In identifying and recognizing behavior and symptoms related to mental health, let us first define what mental health is. Over the years, researchers are focusing mainly on the causes of mental illness, with the aim of reducing the possibility of having mental illness. However, mental health, as defined by World Health Organization, is not only the absence of mental illness, but also the presence of well-being. Now, what is well-being? Well-being is the state to which the person realizes or maximizes his or her own potentials, can cope with normal adversities, can work productively, and is able to contribute to the community. Mental health, on the other hand, is not even a black and white thing. So this is not absolute. Not only about whether you have mental illness or not, there is a gray area in between. Hence, the continuum model in understanding mental health. For example, person A has no mental illness. Should we be able to say that person A falls under the optimum mental health? Of course, the question is whether person A has high or low level of well-being. If he has high level of well-being, it is clear enough to say that the person A falls under the optimum mental health. But what if he has low level of well-being? Again, we have to go back to the definition of mental health, stating that it is not only about the absence of mental illness, but also the presence of well-being. Now, how about person B? Okay? Person B has been diagnosed with mental illness. Should we have it under mental illness per se? Of course not. Again, the next thing that we should know is whether person B has a high level of well-being. If person B has a high level of well-being, such as having a strong support system, the ability to bounce back and move forward, then, despite the diagnosis, person B may still flourish. So, if you have co-employees that are diagnosed with mental illness, please do not discriminate them. Employers, managers, or heads, as long as your employees are supported, you will not only nurture them to productively contribute to the company, but you will also help them humanitarianly. Okay? Now, to summarize, person A may fall under this area if he has no mental illness and has high level of well-being. However, if it's the other way, person A has no mental illness, however, he has low level of well-being, then he might belong in this area. Person B, on the other hand, may fall under this area if he has mental illness and has low well-being. But he may belong here if, despite the mental illness, he has high level of well-being. Another way to understand mental health is through biopsychosocial framework. This explains how biological, psychological, and social aspects, once combined, may lead to comprehensively understand one's mental health. For example, your coworker or your subordinate employee's low performance at work may be um, thoroughly understood using this integrationist approach. For example, coworker A may be experiencing hormonal dysregulation, perhaps menstrual period, so that is under biological. So as a result, she could not focus fully on the task given to her. So affected yung cognitive ability, which may also result to having poor cooperation with co-workers and to which this relationship may be affected. Okay? Another example, subordinate A may be having poor coping, poor social skills rather, talking impolitely to supervisor and not following orders. So that is under psychological. And it turns out he has problems at home, such as marital concern, and has also happened to have or to be experiencing symptoms of prostate problems. So simply put, a sound mind in a sound body and environment and vice versa. So we cannot accurately understand a person basing only in one of these aspects, as these aspects are interrelated to each other. Now, let us define abnormality. What is abnormality ba? I'd like you to look at these behaviors. Okay? A man kissing another man. A person feels that everyone is constantly watching. A wife who leaves food and gifts for her departed husband. Okay? Which among these are abnormal behavior and why? What do you think? So, some of you may have chosen one or perhaps more than one behaviors which you think are abnormal. A man kissing another man may still not be normal to most of us if we would compare how normal this is to Western countries. Similar with offering of food and gifts to departed loved ones, which is actually relative to their own respective culture. So, on the other hand, the last one, a person feeling that everyone is constantly watching, we may want to consider the age because for adolescents, the world is but a bigger theater. So in general, in identifying whether these behaviors are normal or not, the context is imperative. Hence, some of you or most of you may have uttered, it depends. For example, how unusual before we could say that it is not normal. Crying so loud when grieving may be acceptable to other countries, but not to others. And also, if abnormality means falling under the extremes, what do we call then the individuals who are extremely good in playing piano? Do we call them abnormal? No, we call them gifted, right? Another concern, is it normal only if the person would like to get rid of that behavior and is normal if the person is not suffering from the behavior? How about those people whom lying and cheating are actually satisfying than distressing to them? But despite this, these behaviors are actually causing distress to others, right? Another question. Are only behaviors resulting from mental illness be labeled as abnormal? Why do we call it mental illness and not mental disease? Say, for example, you are experiencing extreme fatigue, feeling very thirsty and hungry, even if you keep on drinking and eating, and you have wounds that are slow to heal. Your doctor may ask you to have your blood tested for sugar counts, right? For possible diabetes. But if you are experiencing extreme sadness, pleasure, pleasurable activities are no longer pleasurable to you. You have difficulty sleeping, could not eat, not able to finish given tasks, things like that. Will you be given order by your doctor to have your blood tested for a possible depression? No, right? Because unlike the disease, illness is a case-to-case basis. Will not having then a diagnosis mean you cannot seek for a treatment? Of course not, because diagnosis for mental illness, although needed, is not always a requirement for you to be regularly seen by your mental health professionals. Mental health professionals such as psychologists and psychiatrists. Because in mental illness, generally, it is the symptoms that are being treated. Now, modern judgment of abnormality are not based on the previously discussed criteria. I just presented it for critical thinking. So, basis or judgment for abnormality are the interplay actually of these four Ds. Okay? Distress, deviance, dysfunction, and dangerousness. Okay? So, in distress, behaviors and feelings that causes distress not only to the person but also to the people around that person may be considered as not normal. Deviance. Highly deviant behavior such as chronic lying and stealing, hearing voices whispering to one's ears when no one is around, seeing and feeling insects crawling inside your body that aren't there, may be considered for judgments of abnormality. Behaviors and feelings are dysfunctional if it is affecting the everyday task of a person, such as feeding and grooming oneself, holding a job, and maintaining close relationships. Finally, potential harm to oneself or others, including animals, is falling under dangerousness. So these four B's together may lead to judgment of maladaptive or abnormal behaviors. Now, when do we seek help? Contrary to the belief that only crazy people are recommended to see mental health professionals, even if you are not on the verge of, you may actually still seek help from mental health professionals. At the same time, seeking help from them isn't always about every single challenge that life is giving you. Sometimes our friends, family, or colleagues can be of help, or sometimes we can even help our own selves. Now, when to seek help nga? How do you know if you already need some help, particularly from the mental health professionals? So here are some of the common reasons why people consult mental health professionals, because there are things that we don't want to be known to people we are having close relationship with. So a confidential and non-judgmental consultation, which is possible when we seek from the mental health professionals. Now, so here are the common reasons. They have experienced traumatic or stressful events such as death of a loved one or loss of a job. Others may already have mental health concerns such as anxiety disorders, mood disorders, eating disorders, and the like. Some are experiencing life transitions, such as entering adulthood or starting a new career. So some of you may be able to relate here. So kung before, provided ka ng parents mo, ngayon kasama ka na sa nagbabayad ng bills, and ikaw na mismo yung gumagastos para sa sarili mo. Or some of you here are new parents, new mommies and daddies. So unlike before na intimate and smooth yung relationship ninyo as a couple, ngayon meron ng little one to take care of and to consider. Or some may be on their retirement level, perhaps having regrets and worries. Some would want to organize their thoughts, be aware of their feelings, and discover themselves. Perhaps at some point in their lives, as cliche as it may sound, they sort of having this feeling of being lost. So they want self-discovery. Now, if you cannot relate to any of these examples, there may be times that you have this feeling that your life is like a tangled thread, yung bulb hole na sinulid. Or you have this feeling na something is wrong, but you can't figure it out. Perhaps because life is busy. If you cannot be the first person to know when is the right time to seek help, you might want to hear or ask feedback from the people close to you. Okay? There may actually be times that it is not you who needs help, but rather it is you who is capable of giving help. With that, an introduction to psychological first aid may be helpful. Now, I'd like you to write down your understanding or what comes to your mind when you hear psychological first aid. Okay, so I'll be giving you 5 minutes to jot down your understanding of psychological first aid. Please pause the video. Okay, so some of you may have accurately stated the various aspects of PFA, such as giving emotional support, helping people with practical needs, and listening. While others may have stated responses that are beyond the scope of PFA, which is understandable. To be clear, the aim of this webinar is to introduce you to PFA. The succeeding slides which will be presented to you are excerpts from World Health Organization's PFA Facilitators Manual for Field Workers. The training is actually typically taken for days. Also, while PFA aims to build the capacity of helpers in crisis situation, it is to be noted that this will not merit you skills in counseling nor psychotherapy. So generally, you will be introduced on how to assess the situation safely, how to give support to distressed people in a humane and practical ways, and to not cause further harm. So PFA aims to help you know the helpful things to say and do in order to support people who have recently experienced a crisis event. Although PFA is not only useful whenever there is a crisis, as this can also be helpful and useful in our daily work. Now, take a moment. I would like you to take a moment to reflect and write down what do you do to take care of yourself? And what does your team, that is your family, colleagues, what do they do to take care of each other? You have 10 to 15 minutes to do this. So once done, please save your work for later discussion. Please pause the video. All right. To set things right, let us discuss what PFA is and what PFA is not. So let's start with what PFA is. Okay. So it is non-intrusive practical care support, assessing needs and concerns, helping people to address basic needs such as food and water, listening, but not pressuring people to talk. So with this listening, this is one of the aspects to which most of you may be able to relate. You may perhaps have experienced this in one way or another. Your colleague was stressed at work and is facing family problems at the same time. And you attentively listen to his story as he divulged how he is currently feeling and how this is affecting his daily functioning in life. You did not judge him, but rather tried to put your shoes in his situation to further understand him. So, another is comforting people and helping them to feel calm. One way is to ask them to breathe in and breathe out. Helping people connect to information, services, and social supports, and protecting people from further harm. So PFA is a humane, supportive, and practical assistance to fellow human beings who recently suffered exposure to serious stressors. Now, what PFA is not, okay? It is not professional counseling. It is not psychological debriefing. PFA is recommended by WHO as an alternative to psychological debriefing. However, no detailed discussion of the event, but rather a brief but systematical narration of the people's insights, thoughts, and feelings. It may also be of help if it would be asked, if someone has already asked the particular person to narrate his experience, so as not to be exhausting, especially on the end of the narrator. Although it would also depend on the person if he would still like to share with you. Okay. Next is, it is not asking people to analyze what happened or put time and events in order. So definitely the person may still be overwhelmed with what happened. Hence, the last thing that we should be asking the person is to keep remembering the sequence of the events. Okay. Now, although PFA involves being available to listen to people's stories, it is not pressuring people to tell you their feelings or reactions to an event. You may tell the person to advise you whenever he is ready to share. Remind him that you are just right there for him. Okay? Humanitarian act does not necessarily require license or certification. So definitely, PFA is not something only professionals can do. I think a helpful, empathetic heart is what's more needed. Actually, in the pyramid of MHPSS, or Mental Health Psychosocial Support by IASC, or Integrated Interagency Standing Committee rather. The bottom layer, or what needs to be given to the most number in the population, is under the good humanitarian practice on basic physical needs and safety that would protect people's dignity. The second layer includes people who may still obtain mental health psychosocial support through activating available social networks such as family support, or they may be given formal or non-formal education and perhaps livelihood activities. The third layer, to which where PFA is focused on the basic emotional and practical support, which may be given by trained and or supervised workers. And lastly, at the top, smaller percentage of these people who were exposed to serious stressors may need the services of the mental health professionals, such as psychotherapy or medicine. So, in the debate of whether mental health professionals should be exclusive or inclusive, I personally think that in cases of emergency, we need to be inclusive, especially that the needs of the higher percentage in the population requires immediate attention. However, as the need arises, proper recommendation to mental health professionals is necessary to avoid further harm. Now, for the further details on this, please refer on this link. All right. So now, why PFA? There is actually evidence for certain key resilience, the protective factors for people who have been exposed to serious stressors. So if there are risk factors which lead in the development of mental health concerns, there are also factors which may protect the individual. Hence, in the long run, people generally foster healthy coping skills, especially if the PFA have been supportive and being carried out with dignity and respect. So generally, if people feel safe, connected to others, calm and hopeful, have access to social, physical, and emotional support. So with these people, know and feel that someone is there for them to help. Um, Regain a sense of control by being able to help themselves. So people may gain resilience or the ability to bounce back and move forward, or others who may have difficulty bouncing back perhaps ultimately develop post-traumatic growth. That is a theory which explains that people who faced and endured serious adversities and psychological struggles may also often see positive growth afterwards. So people basically gained wisdom from their experiences on helping themselves, which led them to transcend at the most. Now, who may benefit from PFA? Okay. PFA can be offered to anyone, regardless of the age, gender, social status, position at work, and the like. But remember that PFA should be voluntary, which means not everyone would want to be helped or may not be ready yet to be helped. So as long as they want to receive PFA may be provided to very distressed adult and children who were recently exposed to a serious stressful event. However, remember the intervention pyramid I have shown you a while ago? At the top, clinical care may be deemed necessary to people who have serious life-threatening injuries, so upset that they cannot attend to themselves and their children, and people who may hurt themselves or other. Hence, um, referral to mental health professionals is very important. Now, PFA when? Okay. PFA can be offered immediately after the event or even weeks after, especially if people are still distressed as brought about by the event. PFA where? Okay. In general, it can be anywhere as long as it is safe for you and for the people you are helping. Privacy of the information being shared at you right at the moment should be protected, especially for cases which involves serious matters such as sexual harassment. So we need to protect the dignity of the people. Now, let me share to you the action principles of PFA. The first is look. So this refers to how to assess the current situation, who seeks support, what the risks are, the needs of the affected, and expected emotional reactions. So you may actually remind the person that what he may be experiencing at the moment, it may not look normal, but because of the situation, it will become normal. Okay, so an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is actually normal. Next is listen. So listen refers to how to begin the conversation, introduce the helper, pay attention and listen actively, accept feelings, recognize, calming someone in distress, ask about needs and concerns, and help find solutions to needs and problems. Okay. Allow me to share with you an infographic. This was done by one of my co-psychologists in CPPS, Franz Gavino. Okay. So this is an example of key psychosocial responses in terms of sending interest and empathy. So, una, iwasan natin sabihin, ano, ganyan ka na naman, ganyan ka na lang palagi. Diba? Sa halip, ito ang iparating. Kumusta ka? Anong nararamdaman mo? Pangalawa, nasa isip mo lang yan, kaya mo yan. Iwasan nating sabihin ito. Sa halip, ito ang iparating. Ang hirap siguro ng pinagdadaanan mo. paano kita matutulungan? Ikatlo, iwasan nating sabihin, bakit ka nagkakaganyan? Masaya naman tayo ah. Sa halip, ito ang iparating. Di ko man naiintindihan ng lubos ang nararamdaman mo. Nandito ako para makinig, ha? At ang huli, iwasan nating sabihin, kaya mo yan, magdasal ka lang. Okay? Sa halip, ito ang maaaring iparating. Mayroon tayong pwedeng gawin para matulungan ka. Sasamahan kita. Okay. These are effective ways of communicating to other people, okay, especially the distressed ones. So the last principle, link. Okay, so this refers to how to assist with accessing information, connecting with loved ones and social support, tackling practical problems, and accessing services and other help. So when you are ending your assistance, natural coping mechanisms may be reiterated, such as eating nutritious foods and exercising, avoiding substance intake, such as alcohol and drugs, and maintaining proper hygienes and the like. Okay. So you may also ensure having proper endorsement to the family, for example, and if referring to the mental health professionals, explain that you are recommending them to someone who may be of advanced assistance. Okay. Now, I'd like you to get your paper, okay, the one that we did at the beginning of our webinar. Okay. I'd like you to recall what you wrote, okay, in your paper, right? How do you take care of yourself and how your team is taking care of each other? Okay. Think of particular daily work which you think PFA can be helpful or useful. Okay. You may think of possible stressful events which your help may be needed or you may be needing help. So I'll be giving you 5 to 10 minutes to imagine stressful events that you may possibly experience. Okay. Please pause the video. Okay. So some of you may have mentioned in your paper events such as not having unsupportive, having unsupportive manager, okay, organizational transition, marital concerns, company recession, employees who may experience decrease in salary because of the pandemic crisis that we are facing right now. Now, I'd like you to discuss on that. And prior that, I'd like you to keep in mind that your mental health also matters, okay? Remember that you are helping the people help themselves, okay? So hence, accept what you can and you cannot do, okay? Going back to what you have written a while ago, discuss on a separate day on how you can practice self and team care, okay, before, during, and after the serious stressors. Okay. For now, we will be moving forward to adaptive coping skills. Remember when bucket list of places become trending? Okay. People are ticking off places they have been. CPPS posted this infographic sharing that coping skills may also be considered for a tick off in the bucket list. So this includes the following: mindful breathing, time with nature, problem solving, talking to a friend, decatastrophizing, radical acceptance, assertive communication, gratitude, learned optimism, sleeping to recharge, progressive muscle relaxation, positive self-talk, talking to a professional, establishing healthy boundaries, breaking the problem into smaller parts, praying, spending time with pets, reframing the problem, and parenting the child within. Okay. So you may already be familiar with some of them. Okay. So for others, you may opt to research further if you'd like to explore on any of these. Okay. Now, in this webinar, we will particularly learn behavioral activation. Okay. In this particular part of the webinar, you may opt to do the activities simultaneously or do them on a separate day. Okay. Being stressed and facing adversities are inevitable. Hindi siya pwedeng hindi mangyari. Okay, so wala tayong ligtas. Ang mga excuse lang dyan ay yung mga wala na dito sa mundo, yung mga sumakibilang buhay. Okay, so we really have to deal with them because they are part of our lives. Okay, so one way to deal with them, the stressors and adversities in life, is by developing healthy coping skills. One of which is behavioral activation. Okay, I have adopted this get out of the trap and get back on track on Cantor et al.'s empirical study, where TRAP stands for trigger response avoidance pattern, and TRAC stands for trigger response adaptive coping behavior. So basically, we would just like to replace AP or avoidance pattern into AC or adaptive coping behavior. Okay. Now, let's discuss the word trap. Okay. Have you ever felt trapped? How does it feel? You may pause the video and write down words which you can replace the word trapped with to describe the feeling of being trapped. You may actually think of synonym. Okay. You may pause the video. Okay. So some of you may have written words that we will be mentioned here. Okay, so suffocated, so feeling mo hindi ka makahinga, weighed down, ang bigat ng pakiramdam kasi merong parang kapasan sa dalawang balikat mo, caged, stuck, grabbed, caught, hold, tangled. Okay. Now, how, when, and in what ways do we feel trapped? Okay, I want you to reflect on this and pause the video. So how and in what ways? Life situations. You may be feeling trapped. One could be because of your life situation, such as married life situation at home with your family, or your situation at work, especially right now na madaming naging sudden changes, okay? Being trapped within yourself, you may have reservations in expressing yourself freely kasi baka hindi ka matanggap ng mga tao or baka may masaktan, okay? You are trapped inside your head. Thoughts keep on running inside your head. It won't stop. Ang dami mong iniintindi. Okay? Limited choices. Being under quarantine, hindi ba, in itself, we may feel trapped because we are contained in our house. Okay? Simpleng ulam nga lang eh. Fresh meat and vegetables, hindi na siya ganun ka-accessible ngayon kasi sarado na yung mga ibang wet market and sa supermarket, medyo may kamahalan siya. Okay? And in terms of work, limited yung resources kaya hindi ka makagalaw ng husto, right? I'm sure marami pa kayong mga isinulat dito in terms of expressing, describing how it feels when you are feeling trapped. Okay. Now let's start understanding behavioral activation. Okay. So this may help us get out of the trap and get back on track. Okay. So behavioral activation is under CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy in the psychology world, right? So with CBT, it explains how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors affect each other. For example, you thought of yourself as an ugly person. So as a result, you are feeling sad, okay? And hence, you might avoid people. Or pwede din naman, it's because you are feeling sad, kaya nasigawan mo yung kasama mo. So, hence, you are thinking of yourself na you are stupid. Okay? Basically, we will learn how behavior can directly affect mood. So, ang magiging focus ng behavioral activation is emotions and behavior. Okay. So, we will learn how behavior can directly affect mood, how to use skills to put ourselves in situations which will most likely improve our mood, and lastly, to get out of the trap and get back on track. Here are examples of how behavioral activation may be used. Okay, please read and you may pause the video. All right. So in these examples, Jim and Debbie are both dealing with depression. Okay, so Jim was wondering about his mood swings. During the consultation, he was able to discover triggers of these moods. Sometimes nga kasi because we are busy with our lives, we forget to have a quiet moment and sit in our still place. Okay? Now, because of Jim realizing the triggers with help of the therapist, he was able to change his approach and eventually improved his mood. Okay. Now, unlike Jim, Debbie, on the other hand, is aware of her triggers. Okay. It's just that when she is feeling down, she tends to avoid her friends. But then her friends happen to be her source of joy then. Eh. So in here, the therapist guided her on being aware of her avoidance pattern and eventually change this avoidance pattern into an adaptive coping behavior. Okay. Now, you might be asking yourself if BA will be helpful for you. Okay. By the way, although behavioral activation is an intervention mostly associated with depression, it is also recommended to be easily adopted for non-clinical population. Okay. Now, will behavioral activation be helpful for you? First, do you have a sense of what is triggering your mood or anxiety? Do you generally find yourself doing very little with little pleasure of meaning in life? Are there times that you feel better or worse and you're not sure why? Do you have difficult time working with your negative thoughts but seem to feel better when you can get yourself moving and doing something? Do you have a hard time even knowing what to enjoy or find meaning in? Okay. So if you answer to yes to any of these, then behavioral activation may be helpful for you. Behavioral activation involves understanding vicious cycle. Okay. So yung vicious cycle, nanganganak siya, no? Okay. Here's an example. With vicious cycle number 1, the event, for example, is you lost your job. Now, because you are feeling sad, anxious, embarrassed, what you do is you isolate yourself. Okay, you stay in bed, you don't engage with family, you don't return calls or texts, and you avoid people. And because of what you do, you are actually feeling worse. Okay, so what happens now is nagkakaroon ng second vicious cycle, meaning nagkakaroon ng another event which actually increases the hardships, no? So dahil ina-isolate mo yung sarili mo, posibleng iniisip ng family mo na yun yung gusto mo talaga, kaya sinusunod na lang nila. Kaya hindi ka na nila ini-invite sa family gatherings, yung mga friends mo, pwedeng hindi ka na tinatawagan or tinetext. So, patuloy mo ngayong gagawin tong mga to, no? At patuloy mong mararamdaman ang mga ito. So, cycle siya, walang katapusan. You are trapped in a way. Okay? You can understand your vicious cycles by doing this, but it is recommended that you are being guided by the mental health professional. Okay? Now, the first step in behavior activation is, para ma-address mo yung concern, kailangan alamin mo muna, saan ka ba may concern? No? You need to monitor your activities. Gaya ng example dito. Paano mo malalaman kung saan kailangan mag-improve ng anak mo, ng pamangkin mo sa school? For example, i-monitor mo, hindi ba, how your child is doing for each subject? Now, here is an example of activity monitoring worksheet. Okay. So you may record your activities in an hourly basis, then rate your mood with each activity, 0 to 5 being the lowest, and 6 to 10 being the highest. Okay. You can be creative if you wish to. Okay. Now, while this may be tedious, research actually shows that writing this activity is more effective than having them all in your heads. Okay. You may pause the video. Okay. Now, after writing down your activities, you may segregate them, okay? You may segregate these activities whether they are ups or downs, okay? So with the ups, those you have rated 6 to 10, right? You write them down here. And then the 0 to 5, you write them down here, okay? So generally, the goal is for you to increase activities in here, okay? And decrease activities on here, all right? You may pause the video. The next step is to decide to which activities to focus on. Okay, so to determine your values, pleasure, mastery, and goal. Okay, so values pertain to what you find meaning in your life. These are the important things for you. Okay, pleasure is anything that is giving you joy in doing the activity itself. So such as hobbies, recreational activities, spending time with nature or friends. Okay, things like that. Mastery, on the other hand, involves activities that merit you with skills development, educational development, or professional development. So this gives you a certain happiness knowing that you were able to achieve something that improves yourself. Okay. Last is goals. So for us to be more motivated and guided in attaining our values, pleasure, and mastery, we set goals and objectives. Here are examples of values. Physical well-being. How do you want to look at yourself? Okay. Intimate relationships. How do you want to spend time together? Friendships. How do you want to improve your relationship? Family relationships. What is important to you about having a good family? Mental or emotional health. Why is this important for you? Okay. Next is employment. What kind of work is valuable to you? Spirituality. What kind of relationship do you want with God or nature or mankind? Okay. Uh, Education. What would you like to know more about? Okay. Citizenship. What kind of community you'd like to belong to? And hobbies. What relaxes you? Should it be hard for you to know your values, you might want to consider doing these exploration of values. Okay. Imagine that an important newscaster were doing a biographical story on your life. So, paano kaya yon? Ano kaya ang sinasabi niya about you? Imagine you could read the mind of a person that's important to you and with whom you've had a good relationship with. Ano kaya ang nasa isip niya? Okay? Think about your heroes. Okay? What are the qualities of these heroes that you are idolizing? Okay? Imagine you are writing your own autobiography. So, paano mo kaya siya isusulat? Imagine that someone is performing the eulogy at your funeral. How do you think it will sound? Okay, so you may try doing this, exploring your own values. Now, this one, values rating sheet. Okay, so based on what we have discussed on the previous slide, okay, this is the summary of your values. Okay, so for example, to live a healthy life and take care of my body. So that is under physical well-being. Okay, or to be a good friend. Okay, that is under uh, friendships. Okay, so then rate each domain for how important it is to you. Rating from 0 to 10 rather. 0 not important and 10 being extremely important. So remember that values are not how people treat us, and it is not specific things to which we are achieving. Okay, you may pause the video for this activity. Okay, so now let's translate your values into activities. Kasi for this to be realistic, this should be done. Okay, so paano? Minention mo na ano yung values mo, pero paano siya take place, okay? So we need to translate that values into activities. Example, parenting. So this may be under family. I want to involve my children's interests and learning. I'd like to build special memories with my kids and spend quality time with them. Okay. And how will you translate this into an activity? Okay. I am going to attend to the next PTA meeting and maybe contact the teacher to be a classroom volunteer. I can plan a small vacation to take with the kids next summer. Now, I'd like you to do that with the rest of the things that you have written under your values. Okay. You may pause the video. Okay. So, in doing other aspects, so apart from the values, you may also do the previous activities in terms of the pleasure and mastery. So, para balance siya, no? Okay. Now, the last thing is activity scheduling, okay? And in activity scheduling, this should be SMART, okay? Very common na ito sa inyo. SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Specific, halimbawa, ang gusto mo. Ano ba yung gusto mo? Kailan? Paano? Okay. Example, I want to lose 10 pounds in 2 months. Paano? By counting calories. Okay. Next is M. So this talks about number. Okay. This should be measurable then. I want to eat more protein and less carbs. Okay. Kaya lang parang vague siya, no? I want to eat more protein and less carbs. So we need to be specific. I want to eat 90% protein and 10% carbs. Okay. Then next is achievable. Okay. Smaller goal, bite size, not crash. Halimbawa, ano ba yung goal mo? Gusto mong pumayat. Pero masyado yung broad, di ba? Masyado siyang malaki. Overwhelming. So, palitin natin para bite size lang. Okay. So, gusto kong mag-lose na 10 pounds. Okay. And it has to be realistic. No? You have to look at your condition. Halimbawa, pwede ka ba dun sa ganitong diet? Baka mamaya diabetic ka or high blood ka. Okay? So this has to be realistic. Look at your condition. Next is time bound. Okay? When to accomplish. Okay? When exactly do you want to accomplish? Kasi 'di ba, tracking your progress motivates you. Okay? So in 2 months, then with that 2 months, ang gagawin mo yan every 2 weeks. Nag-check ka kasi 'di ba mas motivating kapag nakikita mo yung progress mo na in 2 weeks nakalose ako ng 3 pounds for example. And the other week ganito naman. Okay, so it has to be SMART. I know marami kayong naisulat doon sa values, mastery, and pleasure. Kaya lang, we only have 24 hours in a day, you know? So, by default, yung 8 hours sa pagtulog na natin. So, we need to schedule those activities, okay? Now, you may do the previous activities. Medyo kailangan niya ng ng consistency. So mag-work siya, kaya nga siya behavior activation. Mag-work siya kung gagawin mo. Okay? So doon natin makikita if mag-improve yung mood. Okay? So if unti-unti you will get out of the trap and get back on track. Okay? Now this is simple tips. Okay? These are simple tips in problem solving and acceptance naman. Okay? So adaptive response number 1, get the facts. So this is about thinking. First is there a problem? Okay. Remember your thoughts aren't facts. Okay. You may practice decreasing negative covert verbal behavior and increase positive covert verbal behavior. So when we say covert, this is unobservable. So this is what you are telling yourself. Pero what you're telling yourself may not be true because your thoughts aren't facts. Okay? Number 2, problem solving. Solve the problem. Okay? Baka naman hindi ikaw yung problema in the first place. Halimbawa, nalilate ka palagi ng pag-submit sa deadlines. Okay? Sinabi mo na kagad sa sarili mo na ang tamad mo kasi. Okay? But then as we assess the situation, hindi ka pala nakakasubmit on time kasi late na nabibigay sa'yo yung data na kailangan mo or nawawala ng internet connection. So, isolve natin yung problema. At posibleng hindi naman ikaw yung problema. Tingnan din natin yung external circumstances. Okay? Last is accept. Okay? So, if you keep on solving a problem, tapos hindi naman nasa-solve, maglilid lang yan sa frustration. Okay? Sabi nga, mas masakit, di ba, kapag kapit ka ng kapit, ayaw na nga. Okay? So, learn to let go. Stop beating a dead horse, especially if lahat na ng isinulat mong possible solutions, nagawa mo na. Okay? From the outside in. Act according to a goal rather than to a feeling. Okay. Madalas bago tayo kumilos, hinihintay natin na maging okay muna yung nararamdaman natin or yung emosyon natin, di ba? So, paano kung hindi maging okay? Paano kung matagal? So, act based on your goals and not on your feeling. Actually, makaka-relate kayo doon yung minsan kapag ginawa mo na siya, kapag kumilos ka na, nagtutuloy-tuloy na siya. Okay. So, sabi nga doon sa movie na napanood ko, nung tinanong si Atlas, paano niya nakakayang buhatin yung mabigat na mundo? So, ang sagot ni Atlas, non cogitare sed facere. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? To not overthink things, but to them. Maraming salamat po for spending your time with me, and most especially, thank you for prioritizing your mental health. Good day to everyone.